Hi, my name's Doug and this is BreakTech. In our last video we created the navigation section of our project, and in this video we're going to create the first section of the website, which is a parallax container containing a hero image, and overlaying on top of that we're going to put some text, and then we're also going to put a call to action button. So what we currently have is here. Let's go ahead and create a new section. I'm going to create a comment here, and I'm just going to say this is our hero section, which is a hero image and a parallax container. So we need to go back to the Materialize documentation. We'll go down to JavaScript this time and pull up parallax, and we'll just copy this text. So what it is, we're going to have two divs. The parent div is a parallax container, and the inside div is the one which has the background image, and it'll be our it'll actually have a class of parallax. So the one that we'll actually put our content into will be the parent container, and then it'll be, sibling with the parallax image. So we'll go ahead and paste that back into our project and fix the tabs a bit. Now I've gone ahead and downloaded two images from Pexels, which is just free stock photos. And if you want to use the same photos, you can find them there. If not, you can use any photo you think that will fit in this design. So for me, I'm going to use this desk small image here. I'm going to copy the full path, and I'm just going to replace. Oops, I didn't want the full path. I wanted to copy just the project path. So let me redo that here, and we'll paste that in. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and look at our project and see what's happened. So we currently have an image. Now we haven't done everything we need to make it actually a functional parallax image. The next thing we need to do is head back over to the Materialize documentation, and you see here that we have to add a document.ready function to our JavaScript file, and then we need to add this parallax container to invoke the parallax function that Materialize gives us to activate this parallax container. So let's go ahead and copy this code. Since it's our first JavaScript function that we'll be adding, it actually contains everything we'll need. So we'll go back to our project, and we'll go to our scripts.js and ignore what was already there. We'll get there in time. I'm going to paste in what we just copied. And there's one other thing we need to do in order to test this. So I'm just going to add this as a temporary feature so we can test the parallax container. I'm just going to put on the body of our HTML, I'm going to add minimum height of 200 VH or viewport heights, and that will make sure that we always have some space to scroll up and down, even if our page isn't actually long enough. So there we can see that the page is scrolling now at a different speed than the image behind, and that's exactly what we were looking for. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is add something inside of this box containing the image. So what we want to do here is we're actually going to want to write some of our own custom CSS. I'm sorry, custom HTML. Let's go back to index.html, and we're going to add inside of here. Now if you want your components to be full width of the screen, you don't want to use the container. But if you do want them to, if you want them to be brought in a bit and have some margin on the sides, you'll want to use a container div that all your other content will go inside of. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a container. And I'm using Emmet, so I just put .container. It knows that I want a div with the class of container, and then I hit the tab button, and it'll fill that out for me. But if you need to type it in, go ahead and do that. And then inside of there, we want to have a row. And inside of that row is where we'll actually have our first content, which will be another div, which is our column, our first column. Now in this column, we want to what we want to do is we want to use the grid that Materialize gives us to sort of arrange the elements of this column inside of our row, which is inside of our container, which is inside of our parallax image. So what we want to do here is I want and Materialize, if you've ever used Bootstrap, it's very similar. You get a 12-column grid. I want to use 8 of those 12 columns on a large screen, and on a small screen I want to use 12. Now, why am I not putting anything in here for medium is because on medium I don't want it to change until it's small. I think medium and large in this particular design are going to be so similar that it's not going to matter. And then I also want to make sure that the text in this section is white. And here I want to have some sort of message to the visitor. And so we're going to start with an H4, and we'll get to the classes here in a minute. And I'm just going to say, I'm Doug Berg, freelance web designer, and use an ampersand. Of course, you put whatever information in here you want, but I am a freelance web designer and front-end developer living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, so that's what I'm going to put. And then let's get to work on the classes for this H4. So I want to do a couple of things here. I liked that thinner style of text that I used on the logo, so I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to create a class called thin text. I also want to left align this text, and when you see it next to the image, you'll understand why I want to do that. And then I want to change the color. I want to change it to the deep orange text, and then I want to do lighten 3. So let's go ahead and look at that and see what we got. Alright, so we got some super orange text here, but it's definitely not where I want it to be. And then I think what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to vertically align this. We're going to want it close to the center. So let's go ahead and go back to the Materialize documentation, and we're going to head over to CSS and helpers. And the helpers under the CSS, they're all our alignment helpers. So we've got vertical alignment, which is what we're looking for, but we also have left, right, center align for text. And then we have quick floats where we can float different elements or divs that we create to the left or the right. But in this particular instance, we just want this vertical align. We need to put on the parent of whatever we want vertically aligned, this v-align wrapper class. And then we want to put v-align on whatever we want vertically aligned. So let's go ahead and head back into our project. So the parallax container is kind of our top level. And then what we want to vertically align is this text. So let's go ahead and look at that. Alright, so we're now vertically aligned. So now that I come back and look at this, I don't think that orange is going to work out for me after all. So let's go ahead and change that color. I think I want to stick with the white text. So let's take out the deep orange, the vertically align. I'm sorry. We're going to keep the alignment. See what it looks like white. I think that looks good, but I think it's a little bit difficult to read. So let's add some custom styling to this. let's go ahead and add that custom styling. Go back into our scripts. I'm sorry, styles, and let's work on that thin text class that we've decided to use on our I like the white text, but I think it's still a little bit difficult to read, and I'm not sure I'm crazy about the font. Well, the font's okay. I'm not sure I'm crazy about the font weight. So let's go ahead and go back and see if we can make this a little bit easier to read. So I'm just going to head into my styling, and I'm going to work on this thin text class that we set up before. I'm going to say I want a font weight of 300. And then I want to change, I want to put a little bit of a background on there as well. And I'm going to use RGBA. And I've gone and looked up what the blue-gray color is, what the equivalent was in RGB, just so I can use that. But then I also want to add a little bit of an opacity to it as well. So we'll say 96, 125, 139. Which is that blue-gray color that we use for our logo area or navigation area. And then I'm going to add a little bit of transparency as well. Now, I also want to add a bit of padding, just because I don't want the background to be hugging my text. And then I want to add a little bit of border radius, just to make it look like I intended for it to be there and not that it was an afterthought or an accidental background color. So I'm just going to do like 10 pixels, and let's see what that looks like. It didn't work, so let's see. Let's make sure we put our thin text class in the right spot. Alright, welcome back. I had just missed a semicolon, so if you saw that, good job. And the semicolon was not allowing my background to display. So that's what we intended. So we got kind of a text overlay with a little bit of a background color just to make it a little easier to read. And we could have done something with like text shadow or something, but that's something you could maybe try on your own. So continuing on from there, we want to add like a call to action button. Some sort of contact me or get a quote, something like that. So underneath the row we've already created, we're going to create a new row inside the same container. And inside of that row, we'll have another column. And we'll say we want this one to be like 4 columns wide. And it's not going to matter as much on small and medium screens as well, because it's the only thing that's going to be in this row. But we do want to position it when it's on a larger screen over to the left side, which is the only reason to put it in 4 columns. And then we want to create a button. So we'll just say, we'll create an anchor tag with the waves effect. And let me go show you what that is real quick. We head back to the documentation and go to components buttons. So if you see that waves effect, that animation that plays on top of the button when you click, that's the waves effect, and you can add that to anything that's clickable by just adding the waves effect class. Next we're going to add let's see, we'll make this a large button with btn-large. We'll make it hoverable, which just makes it raise up off the screen when you hover. We're going to make it red, and then I want to use the red accent too, which you can find those colors over on the Materialize documentation. I'm going to say get a free quote. And that's all we're going to put in there. So let's go back to our website and see what that looks like. So you can see when we hover over the button, it raises up off the screen. And click to get a free quote. And I think that pretty much does it for our parallax container. As you see, the things we put inside the parallax container stay anchored with the rest of the page, and then the image behind moves at a slower rate. So we have a functional parallax container. And as you can see, why I've displayed everything over to the left hand side is the image I've selected sort of has empty space on the left, and then it has like some visual interest on the right. So I wanted to not cover up everything that should had a little bit of visual interest to it. So in the next section, we're going to continue with the section on services available. So if you've enjoyed this video, please click like, please click subscribe, and I'll be back shortly with a new one.